Here's a sneak peek of this week's episode.
In the early days of our relationship, we went with a group of friends to Japan. And then when we got married, we went to Fiji and New Zealand. And then after that, it continued. Like, I think the more we experienced it, the more we wanted it.
I'm Scott.
And I'm Melissa.
And we are the Sunshine Travelers. Our passion is travel and sharing our experiences with those who enjoy it as much as we do, or those who want to learn more about travel, or even those that just want to live vicariously through our travel stories. No matter where you fall along that journey, get ready to hear about our firsthand experiences as we visit some of the most interesting and amazing places on Earth. This week, we catch up with some dear friends that have been on their travel journey for a while now. They have literally traveled the world and are now slowing their travel down to have truly unique experiences in the places that they visit. So pack a bag and join us on a trip around the world with our friends Mo and Erica. Well, today we're joined by Mo and Erica, and these are friends of ours that we've known for a while. We started following them. Well, let me take a step back. I actually used to work with Mo, so we've known them for quite a while, but we started following their travel journeys several years ago when they did an epic travel trip that we're going to talk about today. And so, Mo and Erica, welcome. Glad to have you guys on the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, super excited.
So, we have to ask, where in the world are you guys right now? Because you are all over the place.
So, yes, we've been all over. This has been a busy travel year for us. But actually, we're back home in Fort Lauderdale. I just got back last week from India visiting my dad. My dad still lives in India. And we actually left Fort Lauderdale on June 8th to Europe, and then we spent about 3 months in Europe, and then we split ways. We did what we call the Camino de Santiago to end our time in Europe, and then we split ways. She came back home to the U.S., and I went to India to visit my dad, and we're back home in FLL now. So
yeah, my sister was having a baby, so I wanted to get back and be here for that and help her out and stuff. So I went and spent a couple weeks with her and just returned just a couple days ago from Charleston.
Yeah, how exciting. So, Mo, when we were working together, the last time we were together was in the UK. You guys lived in London for a while. And, I just remember thinking back then, because I don't think that we had really gotten super into the travel thing yet. I know I was traveling a lot internationally for work. But I thought to myself, oh, wow, how do you ever get to the point where you just pick up and, move to another country like that? And I just remember thinking that didn't know anybody at the time that had ever done that. And so I thought it was quite interesting. But now, we've been traveling a lot. We love it. And we really enjoy following you guys. And so I want to get into that. First of all, is there, do you guys document your travels and stuff like that? Is there somewhere where our listeners, if they wanted to follow along with you guys and see what we're talking about, where could they find you guys at?
Sure. So actually, we have something on Facebook, or that's where we started it. It was called Raut Finder. Since our last name is R-A-U-T, Raut, so it's kind of like a play on words. So it's routfinder.com, facebook.com/routfinder. We started this in 2013, Scott, when I know we were working together in London, when we decided to take a break from our corporate jobs and do a 11-month trip around the world. So that's at that point, I don't even think Instagram was actually that big then. Maybe it was, but it wasn't. I wasn't aware of it. So
I think Melissa was probably the only person on it at that time.
And it was photographs, right? Just pictures and filters and all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah,
exactly. So we had this webpage called That's when we started Route Finder, just so that we could document our travels. And for friends and family mostly, it wasn't more than that, but mostly for us as well. So we could look back on this, what I would say, once in a lifetime journey that we're going, embarking on. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're now on Instagram too, under Route Finder.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, after that, for that whole period of time, like, I was just always like, look where Mo and Eric are. And did you see their post? And just so intrigued, because our kids were, well, I guess our daughter had just graduated, but we had a son that was middle school going into high school, right? So we still had a kid in school and stuff like that. So just so intrigued by your travels and you were able to do and everything you were able to see.
Yeah, before we started that trip or those travels, much like you, there were people actually that we didn't know that we followed their blogs, because it was all blogging at the time, and drew a lot of inspiration from them. And I think also it encouraged us and helped us kind of gain the courage to just be able to step out and try it, see what happened.
So I guess for our listeners, just talk a little bit about that trip, because I remember specifically that you were in Europe, you started in Europe, and I remember you posting something about, okay, we're in Switzerland and our bank account is like draining, and now we're going to Asia to where the money will stretch a little bit further and things like that. So I guess just tell everybody kind of over those 11 months what that looked like.
Sure. So it took a lot of planning. Let me just start with that. I think since we were in Europe, it just made sense to rent a car and drive through Europe. And then the whole point was always at that point, we both had 280,000 plus Delta Sky Miles each. And Delta was given this amazing deal where you could fly one way around the world for 280,000 miles in business class. So, I mean, that's just unheard of. I mean,
that inspired the trip. in a big way.
Yeah, and they had a special dedicated around the world desk. I was friends with those guys. I had 3 people who just knew like how many people are calling about this trip, right? So you spend hours with them planning the trip. They're telling you what the options are, and you just basically, are part of the process in planning your trip with them. And that's what drove the inspiration behind the trip, saying let's do this. We have a once in a lifetime chance, because of the miles we've accumulated to do something so amazing. And that's what got us going. So
yeah, I think my brother is probably yelling at his phone right now, because I think he just like 500,000 miles to get to Italy for one ticket.
And they don't do that round the world trip thing anymore. They must have been losing money on it.
But with that being said, like if people are interested in doing round the world trips, there are websites called airtrex.com. I think I've used that personally just to see how much a round the world trip would cost. And it builds you the itinerary. It tells you how much it would cost. It goes to various different the airline alliances and picks out the best flights for you. So I think that's a useful tool to just understand, to get your head around, okay, what would the journey cost? Yeah. So
thanks. Melissa needed one more thing to inspire her here. I got a feeling if I don't hurry up into retirement, she's going to do this trip without me. So I don't know. But, so we do want to come back to that trip, but your journeys actually started before that, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And, the things that got you inspired to travel internationally, right? I think go ahead.
No. I mean, we both grew up traveling to some degree, but mine was, I grew up in the United States, and my parents went on vacations, but they were all domestic. I don't know what it was, about the thought of international travel, but even in elementary school, I can remember writing a paper about wanting to go to Japan and wanting to go to Australia. I don't know where that came from. I think it just seemed so different. So that desire was kind of already there. And then, when we met, Mo growing up in India, he had an opportunity to travel actually some internationally because his dad was a flight attendant. And so he came to the US at a very young age for visits and some other places as well. But then when we met, we both kind of already had a little bit of that love for travel. And in the early days of our relationship, we went with a group of friends to Japan. And then when we got married, we went to Fiji and New Zealand. And then after that, it continued. Like, I think the more we experienced it, the more we wanted it. And then, that just segued into annual vacations. Every time we had, time off of work, it was like, okay, where's the furthest place we can go?
Yeah. Look, and I'll be the first one to say, like, the most diverse, amazing country is the country we live in. But I feel like we can do that at a later stage. Right. Today I don't mind getting into uncomfortable situations, trying to, communicate with somebody who doesn't speak our language, that kind of stuff. So it's a little harder to travel. So I'm like, do that while we still can. And that was the inspiration as well. Let's do that while we're younger. We can road trip to the US when we're a little older, because that's more comfort zone kind of thing. So that was more inspiration. Like, let's see the world now. Why wait?
Yeah, I think living in London also had a big impact on it, as well as we had other opportunities, both of us did, to work in international places during our careers. So we were fortunate there. And for longer stints, not necessarily like a business trip. Like, I spent 6 weeks in India, Mo spent some time in Brussels and Singapore.
I spent 3 months in Brussels. Yeah,
working. Yeah. And and then on top of that, we love food. And the best place to try, the international cuisines is in the actual country. So that's a big part of it. And
yeah, and just, of course, Anthony Bourdain. I mean, how can you not? Like, if you just watch his shows, he just inspires you to explore the world that's around, experience the world that's around you. So just Anthony Bourdain, of course, was a huge influence.
For us, at least.
Yeah.
I think he influenced a lot of people in, to go out there and explore and see new things and try new things. And so
I guess go through, just high level. So then go through kind of where all that round the world trip touched, and how, and maybe I guess those airline stops that you did and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Europe trip is fairly simple. We rented a car out of Paris, and then we did France, we did Italy, Switzerland, Germany, and Spain. And it was a month. It was a month long, and my dad actually came and
for part of it.
It exceeded all expectations. Like, I wasn't big on Germany. I'm like, the food, I mean, yes, the sausages are great. And I know about the Rhine, the wine's like Riesling, super sweet, but it just exceeded all my expectations. The castles were just mind blowing. So, like, if you ever get a chance to go to Germany, I would say take it, do it. Like, I think it often gets overlooked, other than like Italy and other European destinations always take precedence, but I think Germany is massively underrated.
There's a route in Germany called the Romantic Road, and that had inspired a trip for me and my girlfriends probably a year or two before I met Mo. So we went back and kind of redid some of that together. And it's all those castle towns, and it's just beautiful. It's all through Bavaria.
Yeah, so I grew up going to Germany in the summers. And so we had friends that lived there, and we would go stay with them. And since my mom worked for the airlines, it was free to fly. And, but that was back when we had to put on a coat and tie to fly, as a non.
Yeah, I too was blown away our last trip to Germany at the food, how good the food was and how fresh, and like it was so just amazing food there. And I was surprised at that as well.
Germany doesn't crack the top 3 of, like, when you say, where do you want to go to Europe? I mean, Germany won't be there. And I think, people need to have a second look at it. I think it's really good. And then from Europe, then we made it to Australia. We only spent 2 weeks in Australia. We didn't do it justice, just because the exchange rate was terrible at that time in 2013. The Australian dollar was 1 for 1, so like a coffee was like $5 to $6. Pizza was $20, just to give you some point of reference.
Because this was 10 years ago.
It was 10 years ago. The US dollar wasn't doing great. So we spent only 2 weeks there, but then we went to New Zealand and spent a month. And I think that was amazing. We rented a car in the South Island. and just drove around, stayed in campsites.
6 weeks.
6 weeks, actually, not even a month. And I think that was just, I would say, one of the best highlights of our Round World trip. If anybody's thinking of going to New Zealand, do it.
The
Rent a
scenery
car.
is just stunning. And I mean, we basically spent our time driving from one place to the next, but then we'd have like 2 or 3 days in between, and we'd go on like long treks or hikes, and it's just out of this world. Beautiful.
And so you camp. So what did you camp, or like what was the setup for that?
That's a great question. So basically, there are, I think, almost like state-owned campsites, and you get a
They're not
pass.
state-owned, but it's like there's a network of campsites, and you can buy like a membership, which we did because we were realizing that we're staying at these places all the time. At the time, everybody that we'd known that had done it was renting a camper van, but that was expensive. So we we actually ended up with a station wagon, and we thought we could sleep in it if we had to, if we were in a real bind. Mostly we stayed in these campsites in these little, very basic cabins, just a room with a bed. Okay. And then you had access to the shared bathrooms and the shared kitchens, which were like immaculately clean. Yeah. I mean, amazing. And that kept it very economical for us, much more so than the expense of, gasoline on a camper van.
Yeah. And that's kind of, we've stayed in some places like that, even in Alaska too. We did a lot more affordable. Yeah.
And I mean, if you're traveling for 11 months, you're not going to stay in a 5-star hotel every night.
No. That's for week-long vacation.
So, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then one other thing I wanted to back up and just say that our Delta Around the World ticket, the Europe part, obviously, we had some little flights here and there. We got ourselves back to the United States, and we departed out of Atlanta, and the first flight was to Australia because we were allowed like 16 segments and
6 stops.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we used it for the big ones, the long ones.
Sure, because then it's cheaper to go here and there on some little small flights. Yeah.
And also for anyone who's listening, like Star Alliance, like these networks also have their own variations of round the world trips. So if you go to Star Alliance's website, and they will allow you to build an itinerary through their network itself. So it's slightly more restricted. You can only fly United and its partners, and it'll tell you how much it costs or how many miles it would take to do it. So it's not as elaborate as what Delta was offering, but there are other options out there, like a little more dummy down versions of those. So
yeah.
So you kind of hinted on it a little bit. You use that for your long segments and stuff, but then once you got to areas like Asia and stuff like that, you could travel regionally for a lot
and very inexpensive. Exactly. All the little flights. So basically after New Zealand, we were tired of bank account draining down. And the next stop was Southeast Asia. So from New Zealand, we went to Thailand, and we used Bangkok oftentimes for a hub. Like we spent lots of nights at this one DoubleTree in Bangkok, and they started like welcoming us back by name. Because we just used it like as a hub for all the Southeast Asia flights. But Thailand, we were there for a month, and we kind of stayed put there. We only spent time in 2 different towns, Koh Samui and Koh Lanta. So one was kind of on the eastern side, beach towns, and one was on the western side.
Yeah. So we did Thailand, we did Vietnam. Vietnam was, again, another place that just exceeded expectations. So we were a little skeptical going there. Just because as Americans, so and we weren't seasoned travelers there. So we were telling people that we're from Canada, like just to be safe. Like, I don't know how they would treat us and stuff, but it was most welcoming, warm people that you would meet. And it was destinations that's just left a mark in my mind about just wanting to go back. Like I'm longing to go back to Vietnam. So I think I would recommend that. I think the food there is delicious, and it's so cheap. It's
and cheap. Beautiful scenery there again.
Yeah, one of the things that, again, a little silly fact, but you can get 4-cent beers. Basically, you can get a pint of beer for 4 cents. So that should give you a point, right? Yeah, how good the beer is, don't ask me, but hey, when you're on a budget, 4 cents beers work, right?
Yeah. No kidding. And So you guys finished up this trip, and now you're doing something a little bit different. And because in this case, you were moving around a lot, right? Not staying in any one place for really long time.
Our goal is to at least stay 3 days because we felt like at least then you don't feel like you're just constantly moving. But, 3 days is a pretty fast pace too.
We talked about that. Melissa and I were just chatting the other day. It's often when we go to places like this, we miss out on one of the benefits of Marriott offers is the stay 4 nights, get the 5th night free, right? But because we're moving around so much, we miss out on that. And so we've even said that we need to start slowing down just a little bit and take advantage of it because that's a great benefit.
And just to clarify, that's if you book with points through the Marriott site.
Great point. And
Hilton's program is the same.
And Hilton does it too. So
Okay.
Marriott and Hilton do it. So for Hilton,
because we've tried to take advantage of that sometimes on the bigger redemptions, like the more luxury type properties, like get the night free.
Absolutely.
I mean, because like think about it, you're staying 3 nights, so you're just one night away from getting that free one, and so.
And especially if you have status and such, you get
all those perks,
the breakfast, and so that all adds up as well. So it's
absolutely it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we try to always make sure to take advantage of that when they offer it because that's a great perk.
It is.
Yeah.
So
go ahead. I think just to end it. So from Southeast Asia, we spent some time in India with my dad. We did some local trips within India, then went to Turkey. I think Turkey was great. We spent about three weeks.
I think so.
3 weeks in Turkey. And then from Turkey, we went to Argentina. That was a long flight, but spent some time in Argentina. And then we ended the closing was basically an all-inclusive in Jamaica. So we ended our trip
before going back to work and back to reality.
Yeah, so that was it. At that time in our lives, we said if money was unlimited, we would continue to travel. So we wouldn't have stopped. But of course, everybody has constraints, and we had to come back to work. But so a lot of people have asked us this, like saying, "Okay, is that out of your system?" At that point, they were just like, "Okay, now are you done with that?" And my answer is no.
No,
yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it wasn't a checklist; it's more a way of doing things for us. So yeah.
I think that's what happened with us. We took that 6-week trip.
Yeah, that's about it.
And once we took that, it's game on. Like this has got to happen more.
Yeah.
Right? We need this in our lives. It really just, we both just came back probably looking 10 years younger because we had gone through so much. We'd sold a house. Our son had graduated, we moved to a new house, and we had a million things that were in the fire. I was starting a new job and, had wrapped up one that, was just, it was stressful. And so, then you get out there, and I literally didn't talk about work for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think we just relaxed, and by the time we ended up at our friend's wedding in the UK, they were like, "Look at you two," like this big permanent smile on your face.
Scott kept saying, "Yeah, I'm ready to go home and whatever." And I guess he's just trying to talk himself into this or convince himself that or something. Because he was like, "You mean you could keep traveling?" And I'm just like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we had to come see Lottie.
Well, and then Palmer too. We just moved close to Palmer, so we had to be near her too. So
yeah.
So kind of mentioned it just a little bit ago, but now you guys are doing something totally different in your travel.
Yeah.
And so you want to talk about that?
Sure. I think I'll start.
Yeah.
Basically, we're trying to be, we're doing something we call slow travel. At least slow to us. So we try to really explore a place and try to live in one place for at least for a month and truly can never be locals, but be as familiar with the place, try to understand it, try to
develop a routine.
Correct.
Even.
So just for an example, like if we go to a place and we stay there for a month, we don't feel the need to do every single touristy thing in and around that area, because I'm like a local dude. A local would live his life, go to the local market, kind of get coffee at a certain place. So that routine that Erica was talking about, just build that and see if we, how that place speaks to us. So rather than just going at, a million miles a minute.
Yeah, that's not to say we do still spend some time like doing day trips and like mostly in the local area to see what tourist things are there,
Correct.
But that's not well, first of all, you don't have to do it in like 2 or 3 days, which is nice. And then second of all, that's not the primary thing. I think just experiencing the culture and the place, like you said, to see what speaks to you about it.
Correct. So off late, go ahead.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember when we had dinner with you guys in London, 2 things really. You were like, "Oh, what have you done?" And we were like, "We did this and we did this and we went to the cathedral and we went to the Tower of London. We've done this." And and I think Eric was like, "We haven't even done all that stuff yet." I think we've been there like 3 days. And then the second thing was, I think something about like we had taken the underground because we're very familiar with it, and I think you guys had assumed like, oh, they had taken a taxi or something. We're like, no, we've got our Oyster card, and all that kind of stuff. So kind of mixing those 2 things, we do try to hit all the
and the
see the touristy things. Yeah.
You're trying to reach way back, aren't you?
Now I know. Now you don't even need an Oyster card.
But London is one of those cities where it almost forces you to go like a million miles a minute. There's so much to see, so much to do. And there's never enough time to explore it.
We still see and do new things every time we go. And we've probably made 6 trips or so now.
Yeah.
And
we always
you guys live there.
We revisit and do favorites. But then we oftentimes do new things too.
Yeah. Speaking of slow travel, our Europe trip started with 2 weeks in London, actually, and we had an Airbnb just outside of London. And then again, to your point, there's so much to see, so much to do in London, and there's never a dull moment. So, but it's a little different the way we approached it this time, though.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk a little bit about the summer?
Sure. Melissa, do you have a question? Or
no, go ahead. No.
So
just a rough idea of what.
Yeah, we spent 2 weeks in London, and then we went to Croatia. We spent a month in a small town called Zadar. It's maybe like the 3rd or 4th biggest city out there. If you haven't done Croatia, I think it's the best way for me to explain Croatia. At least it's Italy at half the cost and half the crowds, but just as pretty. So, in some cases, maybe prettier. It's basically, geographically, it's just on the other side of the Adriatic. So if you look at it, so you could literally take a boat across and go.
There are actually some ferries that go like between Venice and Croatia.
So we spent a month there, and Zadar is this little magical island that is somehow just not being hit as bad with tourists as like something like Dubrovnik or Split, which are the other cities that the Game of Thrones basically a lot of it was filmed there. So there are so many tours and tourists coming there. It's the infrastructure is not equipped to handle that much influx of tourists, especially during the summer months. So we really enjoyed our time in Zadar. I think the cost of living is very affordable. We had a 1-bedroom little
Airbnb in the historic city center, walking distance to everything. And I
we
think
spent like $1,000
for the month.
And so we did small trips from Croatia. We did go to Split, which is one of the more popular tourist destinations, and
they have some beautiful national parks there. So we visited one of those and would like to go back and visit the other ones.
So a month in Croatia, I think that to us is almost should be part of our annual rotation. I mean, there are some places you want to go back to and some places you want to explore. I think Croatia for us is going to be like one that has to be part of every year if we can manage it.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because we kind of have a few places like that as well. And sometimes we feel guilty about going back to them because, we want to see more.
Right.
But they're just some of our favorite places. And I don't know if you guys have spent much time in like Greece and the islands.
We have not.
We've never been to Greece.
Yeah.
There's so many places.
Is Greece one of those, like, you would
It's
say?
one of those.
Okay.
Yeah, I listened
It's similar, right? Where it's not nearly as expensive and you can find places that aren't quite as touristy. And that was what we love. So, yeah.
Like, dinner, you could get a liter of wine for like $4 or $5, right?
It's crazy.
Really affordable. I thought great food, very affordable. I didn't think like the housing and stuff like that was super expensive. So, but you got to get outside of you're not going to find that in Santorini and Mykonos.
Right.
Yeah, I was just going to ask what
those little smaller islands.
Yeah. So then from Croatia, what was next?
Next, we went to Bulgaria and we stayed in Sofia for, I think we were there 35 days, so a little longer. And it was even more favorable from a cost perspective than Croatia even was. And it was also an excellent place to do a couple other like small trips or short trips to other places. For one, just because the airport was very convenient, is well connected with lots of Ryanair and Wizz Air flights going out of it. So very inexpensive from that perspective as well. But being a capital city, you still had a lot to offer in terms of culture and sights to see, but also as well as, diverse dining opportunities and some very nice dining at a lower price point. So that was nice. And we really did kind of develop a routine there. Really enjoyed it.
We did go to Belgrade from there. An old college friend of mine lives in Belgrade now. He's Serbian. So we did a little road trip. And then the other excursion we took was we went to Malta from Sofia for a couple of nights, Hilton Point, and Malta was pretty incredible. So like just, calling Sofia home base and just doing these little side trips was just fantastic.
Yeah. So we kept the Airbnb all the way through. So it's like, we could pack even lighter and, just take the things we needed for that little trip.
Take that one little backpack on Ryanair.
Yeah, exactly.
Pay your baggage fees. That's for sure. Yeah. So then so you mentioned like the markets. Are there other ways that you kind of tried to immerse yourself in the culture or get to know like the neighborhood, the people?
Yeah, so one thing about the people, I'll just start with that, is you'd be surprised how well people speak English in Bulgaria and Croatia. So, because, even personal experience, like when you go to Italy, it's more Italian and they speak English, but maybe in Rome and stuff, but in Croatia, the English is fluent. In Bulgaria, in Sofia, people speak great English. So, it's so surprising, us, as at least me as an American here, not very familiar with the Baltic bloc, if you will. I didn't know what to expect going in. I know Croatia's not, but Bulgaria is, and I think so. It's easier to communicate. It's easier to assimilate. Like you can have a conversation in a coffee shop or a grocery store very easy. Walking tours are in English. So to answer your question, Melissa, like how do you assimilate yourself? First thing you do is you go on a free walking tour, and it's in English, and it tells you where to go, what places to eat at. So that's always a good starting point, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good to know. And then before we move on to the next destination, what do you do? Like, are there visa requirements and how long you can stay places? I guess for somebody who's thinking about doing something like this, like how do you learn about that kind of stuff?
Great question, actually. There is some thinking that needs to go behind this, because the Schengen countries, I think there are, and I could be wrong, 26 countries, and you can only visit the Schengen countries for a period of 90 days within a 180-day period. So
90 days combined.
So Croatia is part of that. UK not anymore with Brexit, but the rest of the EU, if you will, the Germanys, the Italys, they all count towards your 90 days if you stay there. So a lot of people do this, and Bulgaria is not part of the EU yet. So when you stay in Bulgaria, it doesn't hit towards your 90 days in the Schengen. So So that's something, if you want to spend a lot of time in Europe, you have to be mindful of not overextending your stay. So just do your research on, what countries are part of the Schengen that count towards the 90 days in a 180-day period, and what countries are not.
Yeah, and then go spend some time in the ones that are not, where you can easily get back and forth.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then there are going to be new requirements, visa requirements, starting in 2024.
Right.
Yes. I think it's an electronic permit to enter. Yeah. They've been talking about that since 2020. Yeah. And every year they've pushed it, but I think now they're talking 2024 to have that.
Yeah. So just if you're listening to this in early 2024, going in early 2024, it's supposed to be sometime. I think it's really going to happen this time, but it's like $8 and you do it online, and it's supposed to be pretty quick, but I would just try to make sure that you do it in time. And then of course, like you're saying, just make sure you understand if you're doing a longer trip, what your requirements are. But that's a great tip, right? To know, okay, how can we extend our time and make those 90 days work?
Yes. And that also
I want to say it's an extended amount of time that travel.
Oh yes, it's going to be
program's good for.
Yeah. So
I think we're good too.
Yeah, and then from there, what was next?
So from Bulgaria, we went to Portugal, which is where we started the Camino de Santiago, which is basically a
it's just a network of pilgrims' ways or routes that lead to the shrine of St. James, the Apostle St. James, which is in the Cathedral of Santiago Compostela, and that's in Santiago, Spain. So the route that we choose started in Porto, and
it was 280 kilometers, roughly 170 miles from Porto to Santiago. And, we just, we took minimal travel gear.
Yeah. So there's even service, like luggage service. So the night before we started, we stayed at a Hilton property, and we left our bag with them, and we'd arranged a luggage courier to take it to our hotel at the final stay. So we carried only, very small number of items, knowing that we would need to do laundry along the way, minimizing because you're carrying your bag. There are also bag services where if you don't want to carry your bag, they will porter it to each stay for you. So you can always have your stuff with you, but not have to carry it. So just in general, the Camino is just so well organized. I mean, you have to choose how you're going to do it. But in terms of services and everything that's available to all the help that's available to pilgrims is just excellent for, one of these multi-day journeys. Nothing like, I've talked to some folks that, have hiked parts of like the Appalachian Trail, and, it's nothing like that, because very much more on your own in that scenario. So it's also, I think, easier.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that is like, if someone's listening to this, kind of a level of effort or whatever, what's this trail versus, say, the Appalachian Trail?
So I think the Camino truly is like one of the most unique walks in the world, where you will see people of all ages and all abilities do it, because it allows you to do it at your own pace. And there's enough infrastructure and support system around it to where you will never be, in trouble per se.
Far from help.
Far from help. So we've seen folks that are, multiple folks that are 80 plus doing it. We're seeing folks that are 20-year-old solo backpackers doing it. So the range is, the entire breadth of the age demographic is covered in the Camino, and it's quite inspirational. So
that is definitely a huge inspiration.
So you don't have to be in marathon running shape by any stretch, but I think there is some level of elevation on some days, so you have to be somewhat okay to have those climbs. But outside of that, it's not going to be super difficult.
You would.
So I was watching your journey, and it sounded to me like going to Disney with Melissa.
That amount of
so
steps.
how much did you cover? Like, how long did it take, and then how much did you cover every day?
So we because we were in Europe, I'm just going to talk in kilometers for a second. So it was 280 kilometers. We did that in 11 days. So we averaged around 26 kilometers a day. I think that comes to about 18 miles, give or take.
We front loaded ours a lot. So we were doing 30 plus in the beginning just to get a little
30 kilometers.
Get ahead of the curve. But also I would say we did it a little, our pace was faster than average. And had we had more time, I probably would have slowed it down a little bit just so we could enjoy the towns a little bit more along the way. So that would be a tip, I would say. I think 14 days to do what we did would be more enjoyable if you had the time, but we were crunched for time. So it can be done in a faster period if that's all you've got.
Yeah.
Sure. Do you know what the average is? Do a lot of people take like a whole month or
like
anywhere between a couple of weeks to a month?
So
14 for our route.
Yeah. It's route specific. The original one, I believe, is from France into Santiago, and that's like 700 kilometers. So that takes about a month. Yeah. 30 to 40 days is the average time. So this was just about 170 miles, and people say 13 to 14 days. So is the average time to cover it.
Yeah. The other thing I'll warn you too is we were told that for most people, once you do one, you want to do it again. So just be forewarned.
Yeah. And we didn't believe it, but now we're talking about it.
We got home and we were like, Camino was still on our mind. Like, I started already thinking, like, when would we do it again? What would we do again? You know,
we have to go with you then, so you can go the next time. We'll tag along.
I would strongly recommend doing it in September when we did it, because the weather is just perfect. I think a lot of the vloggers I've seen who do it, I mean, it's not fun in the rain, and there's, you have to do it through rainy conditions, and in the summer it gets really hot. So September was just perfect for us.
But that said, it is something you can do year round.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're walking mostly through towns and stuff like that, right? You're not out in the mountains hiking on,
very little
trails
or something. There is some of that,
it also depends on the route you choose. There's so many options, but again, for first timers, I would recommend the one we did, the coastal route. First of all, it's a little easier, but it's also just stunning and gorgeous views, and you're walking a lot of it along the coast. So to your point, it's not a lot of elevation on many of the days. There are some days where the route takes you into like some pine forests and things like that. So you do spend some time in forests, and there is, I'd say, more, pretty big elevation gains.
Yeah. And just the people you meet. I mean, the friends you make along the way, because you overlap them every now and then. You're spending the night in the same town, so you end up having dinner and a drink with them, sharing experiences of the day. So, and it's truly global, right? And a lot of Americans, but people from everywhere in the world are there, and they all have their own stories to tell and why they've done it. So it's truly a fascinating, it brings the world together kind of experience. So
I'm ready. Cool. Let's go.
Ready. You can have a whole podcast just talking to people on the El Camino, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't beat Portugal. And from what I understand then is that because you're close by those towns, like it literally is like there's accommodations all along the way. And that's designed for that, which makes it so much different from, like you said, the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, they have a whole network of albergues, which are like the hostels that some are privately owned, but they even have publicly owned. So they're very inexpensive, like to get a bed there. We opted to stay in private accommodations, and we didn't actually stay in any albergues. We wanted private bathroom. We wanted to be able to, stretch out and relax a little bit after a long day of walking. And when you're two people traveling together, it's still pretty economical to have one room. If you're a solo, I probably would do more of the albergues. One, because you'd have, people to talk with and spend the downtime with or share a meal with, but two, just the expense perspective.
Right. And just on that note, for us, I think, we would always plan the day before at least on where we're going to target and try to book an accommodation there. Because I think both of us work to where I like a target in mind. The last thing I want to do is walk for, 20 miles and the places are full. So they'll be like, you have to go to the next town, which is 5 more miles down the road. Like mentally, rather know where I'm going. So So that's how it's just to be honest.
Yeah, that's good to know. So that's also interesting because we've had a couple of people ask, like, how would you travel solo, or what would that look like? I mean, it sounds like if you were active and would enjoy doing something like that, that's a great trip, because then you would end up not really traveling by yourself.
Yes, and it's totally also just from like a solo female traveler perspective. It's super safe. You know, solo female travelers, we encountered many. There's nothing to be concerned about, because that's always something I think about, you know, just from a safety perspective. But you know, no, I haven't yet heard one bad story. So
that's good to know. That's something that we can definitely share then as a tip or a destination.
Correct.
So what's next for you guys?
So, well, I was going to say next is a cruise that we were planning on in early December. We got that through some creative status match.
Yeah, thank you. We got one too.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. That's amazing. So, and you're leaving.
Well, they're also
going at Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So we've got to take a few tips from you guys about the Bahamas too and the Atlantis.
Yeah, because I knew that was something we could do
this weekend.
well, but we haven't cashed in on that one yet.
So that was planned for early December, but we might be going to Japan on Tuesday, just trying to take advantage of a buddy pass from Delta. I think it just, buddy pass is standbys only, subject to load, and looks like the flights are favorable. So
if the stars align, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, you can never have too much ramen, I'll tell you that. So yeah.
And so if you get to do that, then how long? Or you'll stay for a month or several weeks, or
just a week? I think it's holiday season and come back family here for Thanksgiving and such. So so we'll be going for a week.
Yeah, so
if that works out for you, you got to let us know, because we usually can get a hold of some buddy passes.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll let you know.
We will. I'll tell you exactly how this experience goes, because it was the first time for us to do it as well.
I mean, it sounded like, we were talking to you guys earlier. It sounded like you have a plan, not going from one of the world's busiest airports, which is a problem. So, yeah.
That's step one.
Yeah. Don't tell the secret.
Don't tell everybody, right? Keep that
I didn't say where. I just said you're not going from one of the world's busiest airports.
And then what else? You have anything else planned? Or?
Yes, I think so. I don't know if I grew up playing tennis, and I came to the U.S. To play college tennis. So I'm a big tennis fan. So I've done Wimbledon, I've done the US Open, I've done the French Open. The only one of the big 4 Grand Slams missing is the Australian Open. So that's been on the bucket list. So the opportunity presented itself for us to use some miles and go to Melbourne in January. So that's the next big trip that's planned for us to see the Australian Open and go to Australia.
Yeah. And we're trying this year. Last year we planned a lot, but we felt like we missed out on some of like the opportunities to do a little more travel hacking, like with some good points redemptions and stuff on flights, because we had planned so much. So we're just not planning as far out. So after that, we're going to go to India, see Bo's dad. And also we've got 2 friends from the US coming to visit us and tour around for 2 weeks while we're there, and then the rest is a question mark.
Well, just talk to Melissa; she can fill it up for you.
That's great.
So it sounds like, and just for everybody listening too, is that you really have been able to capitalize a lot on your travel by using airline points and just keeping an eye out for that and stuff like that. So is that a way, I guess, like people say, travel hacking, like with the welcome bonuses and stuff like that, but then also just your day-to-day spending on a credit card. So then you earn points and take advantage of that because it's available.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I think we do that. We're still not as good as I want us to be. I think there's still a lot of room for improvement, but we're still learning the ways. But we've already reaped a lot of benefits. For example, I took the longest flight in the world getting back to the US from Singapore to Newark in business class for, 87,000 points, basically in business class.
And on that one's interesting because he didn't have the points. So he bought the points. Buying the points was cheaper than buying the flight.
Crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. And oftentimes you will see not only on the airline miles, but also on the hotels. If you look at the points value, like it's like way less. And sometimes you'll see, oh, I could stay at a Marriott or a JW Marriott or whatever for the same as something the points would cost for like a Courtyard or Spring Hill Suites. And it's like, oh, well, I'm going to go with this other one. But the price difference, right, is huge.
Absolutely.
So just being aware of that and looking out for those deals.
Yeah. And on that point too, for the listeners that are thinking or wanting to do more international travel and have points, point redemptions at hotels are so much better outside of the US. So we don't ever use our points in the US. We use them when we go somewhere else, usually. I won't say never, but just being mindful of what is a good points redemption. And if it doesn't make sense to use points, just go ahead and pay that cash. I mean, that's what we do.
Put it on that credit card and get more points, right?
Yeah, we look at it and we say, is this a good option or not? If it's not, we're going to save them for later.
Yeah, and just one more thing to the user, like if you have the Chase card, which basically most is the gold standard, if you will, for credit card brands when it comes to points. Chase is one of the only ones that transfers to Hyatt, and so I think the best value, in my opinion, for points redemption comes out of Hyatt because they have standard rates. It's not dynamic pricing. So
and their lowest room is 3,500.
35,000. Lowest is 3,500. So we stayed at the Park Hyatt in Tokyo, which is the Lost in Translation hotel where the whole Bill Murray, Scarlett Johansson thing was filmed. That point was going for about 1,500 USDs a night, and we spent 35,000 points to spend one night in there. So, that's just value you can't beat. So,
for 35,000 on
a
room
Hampton
in Orlando at the Hampton Inn.
So I think just a tip for your viewers, like the Hyatt points carry in most cases the best value when it comes to hotel redemption.
Yeah, and we're not Hyatt loyalists at all. We don't have any status with Hyatt because it's just not one we've been able to attain. But we're Hilton people, but it is the best from that points redemption perspective.
So I think what people really need to know, understand, pay attention to is that you could literally travel internationally sometimes for cheaper than you can take a trip in the US. If you can cash in some of these free, miles and then hotels and things like that.
Listen to what he's saying. 87,000 miles he flew business class, right?
On
87,000 on that long flight, and 87,000 miles is to Phoenix or something like that, right?
Yeah, we're really late to the game on this whole points thing. I mean, the reason we had all those Delta points was because we were living in Atlanta at the time and we had a Delta credit card and we flew Delta a lot. But now we've learned that it's really better to have a card like a Chase. And I mean, we've got several of them where they have multiple transfer partners and you can look for the best price. Like we flew to London this year one way for 10,000 points on Virgin. I mean, there's nothing.
And Virgin is very nice airline.
If you value it at 1 cent per point, which is what most people do, that's $100.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we do have a few questions that we like to ask at the end of each interview. Throw those out there. What is some advice for people that want to travel the world?
I would just say, do it now. I think we're at a place where the information is at your fingertips. You can, there is no unknowns out there. Travel is going to be safer than you think. I think that's
less expensive,
less expensive than you think. And way more fun than you think. So I think so. Just if you have the ability to do it, don't wait on it. Do it now. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And then secondly is, what's your favorite place that you've ever visited?
For me, I always say New Zealand because it really is. I mean, I do love it. We've only been there twice, but amazing. But every time I'm in Thailand, it just pulls at my heart. There's something about Thailand that's just so magical to me. So, I mean, I think from an ongoing visitor or as a tourist, New Zealand, but as a slow traveler, Thailand.
I think for me, 4 months out of the year, Croatia. I think the other 8 months, not so much, but summer and shoulder season, I think nothing comes close. And I agree with Erica. I think Thailand is just special. It is just a special place. Yeah.
So for Croatia, it would be, so what 4 months?
May to September.
Even touching October, if you will. I think the summer months get super hot and the tourists are, full throttle. But yeah, if you do shoulder season.
May, June, September, October.
Yeah.
Just spend those at the beach.
Okay, good to know. Yeah.
So,
and then
just one thing
finally,
in Croatia, if people are debating, I would say go
on the back end,
because the water is going to be slightly warmer than May, because May you just can't get in.
Chilly.
It's a little cooler. Yeah, so that's about it.
Yeah, that's the same thing here for us on being on the Atlantic, right? Is those early season days, the weather outside may be beautiful, but the water is really cold. So. And then, so what's still on your bucket list?
Where do we begin?
A lot of stuff. I guess maybe top 3 each. How about that?
Okay.
You want me to go?
Yeah, you go.
A couple of things you guys have done that is on our bucket list. So that's the easy. Alaska and Galapagos. That's 2. And then I want to do Antarctica. So Ushuaia and down. So yeah, I think just
we're going to talk about that because that's on our list of nearby, not too far in the distant future. So
let's do it. Yeah. So
yeah, we'd love to do that trip with you guys.
It would be amazing. Yeah.
I would say the same. I mean, we're on the same page, I think, from that perspective. I mean, there's other things too, obviously, but
yeah, I think
they'll come in time.
A close fourth is the Machu Picchu. I think it's always been something that has excited us. To do. Yeah.
Yes, that's on my list as well. So for sure.
Well, Mo and Erica, thank you for coming on. One of those situations where we could probably sit here and talk for 4 or 5 hours easily, but we thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook at Raut Finder. I highly encourage you to go out and just follow their journeys, because I am so inspired by some of the places that these guys go, and Melissa and I talk about it all the time. Our bucket list is ever growing because of them. So,
and it's RAUT Finder, and I'll put the link to those in the show notes as well. And I think you've really given us some great tips, like for all kinds of different travel, right? How to afford it, where to go, like what to be aware of, and so we appreciate that so much.
Thank you so much for having us on your podcast. I think it's been great. Yeah.
We enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think we've got a couple of more episodes where we need you guys back. But, we look forward to it.
Sounds
good. Maybe we can do one in person from some place we travel.
There's an idea.
Yeah.
I have travel equipment that I can bring with me. So yeah, we did Puerto Rico from Puerto Rico. So we took in St. John. So we took the equipment there and recorded live from those places. But
very cool.
That is cool. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
These guys are part of mine and Melissa's inspiration for travel. We have been following their travels now for almost a decade. As you heard in the interview, many of the things that are on our bucket list were inspired by their travel experiences. As always, we want to encourage you to share your travel stories with us. We love to hear from you and get many ideas from the stories that you share.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and will find some inspiration to help you with your travel journeys. Please consider going on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. The more 5-star reviews we have, the more likely we are to be featured and discovered by others. Make sure to follow or subscribe to our podcast to be notified of new episodes as they are released. You can also find us on Instagram as Sunshine Travelers Podcast. Remember, that's travelers with 1 L. Most importantly, share it with your friends and help them catch the travel bug. You never know, they may become your greatest travel companion.